Welcome to Beyond. Our guests today are Olga Smirnova and Ina Kasakina, and they have an amazing story of coming from Russia to America to found a company. They came to the U.S. from Russia in the early 90s, and together they co-founded Global Language Solutions, a translation from providing services to 100 plus language and multinational organizations in the life sciences area, driving revenue to over 20 million per year before they sold to We Localize in 2016. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
It's fun, absolutely.
What a crazy story. So, in America, I have kids, and a lot of adults have kids or that have kids. The challenge is motivation, direction, focus. And here you ladies are coming from Russia, of all places, to America to pursue your dreams. So I just found that really fascinating. So can you take us back to some stories in your early life, your early career? Can you share some stories of how your journey got started in Russia?
I think what we share between the two of us is the passion for languages, and that started quite early. Both of us ended up being linguistics students at universities, but prior to that, we attended language schools. Mine was in Moscow, Olga's was in the north part of Russia, and there's a story that Olga would tell that will tell you why there was no limit for her.
It's kind of interesting how if you try to reverse engineer where your life developed to today and how it came to be, a lot of it is, of course, happenstance, but then there is a thread that goes through it. When I was about 9 years old, we had some neighbors that came into our building, and their daughter was going to a specialized language school where kids were learning English much earlier than in average schools that I was going to. But that part I didn't even know about, but I knew that she was taking a bus to the school instead of walking like me, and I thought that taking a bus is so much more fun, and it'll be so great to take a bus to school. So at 9 years or 8 years old, I skipped my regular school, didn't tell anything to my parents, and went to the other school and walked into the principal's office, and I said, I'd like to attend your school. They said, what? What? Are you going somewhere else? Yes. And do your parents know about this? No, they don't. But if you take me, then I'll tell them, but not before.
Right.
She said, okay, well, why don't you bring your parents? And at the end of the day, I was a great student, so they were happy to take me, and I caught up with the English language program. But the point being that I just wanted to ride the bus to school and not necessarily to go for languages. But I ended up, my whole career ended up being about languages, and
So nothing wrong with taking the bus. And in Russia, was there emphasis on learning the English language?
English was the first foreign language that was offered, the most prevalent. I mean, Ina studied French instead of English.
Yeah, language, I think, was better taught in the Soviet Union than that I see right now being taught in America. And that's why a lot of people growing up in other countries speak different languages. The education that we got and the language instruction that we got was a bit more intense than for most kids growing up in the Soviet Union, but it was still the whole country was emphasizing languages as a part of the curriculum.
And they're still doing that today?
They do.
Oh, wow. It's cool. So as you go on this journey and you took the bus and you realized that there's a passion maybe for language, what were some things you had to learn the hard way in that process, going through that time in the Soviet Union? Because there's got to be some setbacks, some challenges, some uncertainties. Do you guys have anything in mind that really stood out, that things that were just sort of learned the hard way that didn't have to be?
I don't think that kids necessarily got to experience hardships, at least during elementary school, middle school, sometimes in high school. But I think that there were some things that were a bit harder than for the kids that I see now growing up in the US. For example, Olga took the bus to school. I had to take 2 modes of public transportation at the age of 8. Nobody was supervising how we got to school and what we were doing in the process. But it was one of those things that was expected. Kids were not helicoptered by parents from an early age, and they were expected to be a lot more self-sufficient and independent. And I think that served us well later in life.
And the kids, obviously, in the Soviet Union seemed to comply to that, or they Are they playing hooky from school or?
No, everybody was complying because that was really the only way to do, is to go to school and maybe do some extracurricular activities afterwards.
Right, that's awesome.
Yeah, when I was growing up in the north of Russia, there was really no entertainment of any kind. There was no video games. There was 3 channels of government TV that was unwatchable for kids. There was one 30-minute program for children on Sunday mornings that I can remember. That was it. And so you had all this time to develop, and if you had interests and passions, like I read through all my childhood. That's all I did. My childhood was reading and figure skating and then sewing with my grandma and doing all these things. So you kind of acquire skills and knowledge because there is not that much external entertainment going on. So that was actually very helpful.
I think it's very healthy. I mean,
Yeah.
compared to what's going on in America today. I think that's not such a bad thing.
Yeah, there was no social media, thank goodness.
Yeah, and there's one more thing. For kids who wanted to do things after school, I grew up in Moscow, so probably had a little more available to me in terms of activities. All those activities were readily available and affordable to people even from middle class and lower middle class families.
Nice.
So I went to music school, but every other kid I knew went to music school. I played tennis, but a lot of kids did a lot of sports after school as well.
Okay, that's interesting. What was life like growing up in Russia?
Well, one of the things that's probably going to be very unusual for anybody here is that there were food lines. There would be a food line to get a piece of sausage or some milk or some fruit that was not available throughout the year. So, but when you growing up in those kind of conditions, it's your frame of reference, and you don't find it, different or strange or difficult. You just go with the flow. So we were never spoiled, so to speak, and had a lot of good education going on. It was free, and the standards of education were very high, and so we benefited from growing up there and getting that education, I believe.
And most people talk about hardships in the Soviet Union after they have gone to colleges and started working. We managed to leave the country probably just in time for.
So the hardships happen in adult sort of hood with
More
the job.
more so than for children and young adults. Yeah.
So great growing up as a child for sure. What was the so as you sort of think about all the lessons you learned with your experience in Russia? Can you talk about some of the lessons you've taken from your early life and experiences, and how they applied those, or you applied those to business?
Well, my hard lesson was when I graduated from high school, and I was a straight A student it's a 10-year program, and I was supposed to get a so-called golden medal at the end of the 10 years, because that's how they reward straight A students that never had a B in anything. However, there was a shortage of golden medals, and they were only doing 1 golden medal per school, not based on merits, but more like that. And so there was another gal in my class whose mother was on the golden medal committee. So strangely enough, she got the medal and I didn't. And they didn't tell me until the prom night where it was supposed to be given. So anyways, it was my first really, truly traumatic, kind of disappointing experience. And what I got out of it is that, it doesn't matter if you get the medal, if you have the education, and if you put the hard work in, it will pay off later. And sometimes life is not fair, whatever you do.
And how old were you when you had this thought go through your mind?
17.
Wow.
Yeah, I realized, I can do everything I can. It still might not work, but, whatever I put into it still matters. It doesn't matter that, the piece of golden medal is not going to really change anything, right? So that was helpful to kind of dust yourself off, and, I cried my eyes out during the prom. Don't remember.
You probably realized that lesson much later in life, not at the tender
probably.
age of 17.
But you had to move on, and it was a big disappointment, and, I just took that as a lesson that you just work hard and don't really orient yourself to the result, but more to what you're gaining or what you're learning.
Yeah, that's profound. That's a very powerful lesson.
Yes.
Wow.
I think also
Thank you.
choosing the career in languages and choosing to study languages from an early age, we learned that certain things cannot be learned overnight. Like you cannot learn a language overnight. You cannot learn how to play piano overnight. And those type of lessons serve you later in life, in business in particular, because Some companies will get successful overnight, but most of them will not. And it takes time and patience and perseverance.
That is so. That's another profound point, because I always say social media, Snapchat, Instagram, whatnot. They've built their business models on limbic-rich content. So it's emotional, it's a picture, it's an image, it's instantaneous, instant gratification. And I think a lot of what happens in America is a lot of that instant gratification. So the idea that yes, you got to take the long view, you got to work, you got to prep, you got to plan, you got to develop your knowledge base, your skill set. I think there's some challenges in America with certain generations where it's like, well, my parents have been very wealthy, and it should just happen because I've grown up in a very wealthy, perhaps family. And so the idea that, you got to go back and work for it is important, because a lot of these kids that are, I call them trust fund kids, they parents made a lot of money. That's not always a helpful thing to give kids. That's probably the worst thing you could do in terms of their development.
Yeah,
and
it
their
kills
passion.
your motivation and ambition partially, because if you have such a high standard already, it's hard to be truly motivated to go further. And for us, it was, I think my main point is that it took a long time to build an excellent organization, as they say, out of our company. We've been in business for 22 years. And so it takes year after year. And in the US, there is a great positive psychology kind of attitude, like I can do it. And there is an entrepreneurial spirit in a lot of people. But what nobody teaches you is that it's going to take time, long time. And people don't want to think about it. It's not a pleasant thought, right? When you're going into a company, you just want it to grow, you want it to be successful. You're not thinking, okay, well, I'll have to put 10 years of hard work and sleepless nights and frustration and doubt and all of that. Nobody tells you that in business school. They just say, okay, well, you have to do the business plan, you have to have a passion and all of that. However, so the staying power is much more important than initial impulse in my mind.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's powerful. What was the driving force for both of you to leave Russia to come to the U.S.?
I came here just for 1 year. I was a student at Moscow State University, finished my second year of studies, and decided that an opportunity presented itself where I could go to California for a year, work for a startup company, and learn English better than I had already known at that time, and go back home. And that 1 year turned into a lifetime in the States.
Wow.
The startup company never made it.
Okay, but you did.
You did. Fantastically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in my case, I came to visit friends who were living on the East Coast, and then I came to California just to visit for a couple of weeks. And when I arrived here and I saw all of this in Orange County in its full glory in January, I had a tan in 3 days. I was so excited. And yeah, so the weather was the main factor for me to try this place out, and it looks so beautiful. But I came to the U.S. just as a traveler and stayed and now after traveling the world many times over, I think this is the best place to really live.
I think a lot of people feel that way, and I was thinking, Moscow, Orange County, or Russia. That's a tough balancing act for sure.
We had just been misplaced for a few years at an early life. Yes.
So only after a few years in the U.S., you guys founded GLS. And what were some of the hurdles in forming this company when you first had the inception, the idea? What were the realistic, real-world challenges of putting this thing together and starting the process?
First of all, Olga and I met here in America after I graduated from university here, and she arrived to visit friends, as she said. We met at a company working for a job that paid us $10 an hour. And that was really not a lot of money. We both, as I said, we loved languages. We thought about starting a translation company, and we really didn't have much to lose. We found out that to open a corporation in America or in California was $800, so we saved $400 each. Got a cashier's check, and I believe I drove to LA to
pay the
corporation dues, and that was our humble start in translation work.
And then they told us we need to open a bank account. So we went to the Bank of America, and they said, okay, yeah, sure, we'll open your account. You need to put $100 in the account. I said, why? Because we didn't have it.
Right.
I'm like, why do we need it? They said, well, that's our normal policy. I said, well, can you change the policy, please? Because I don't have $100 to put in your bank account. And they did. They gave us a pass. They just opened it with $5 or
Way to
whatever.
negotiate. Very
We
effective.
started early, correct.
Yeah. But then, without business background, it was learning everything ourselves. So from scratch. And so that was the hard part because we didn't have a network, say, or a support group or mentors, for that matter, who would walk us through the process. So it was all kind of just pure common sense and perseverance
And a lot of enthusiasm and fun. We had a lot of fun.
And learn as you go.
Continued to have fun pretty much throughout the entire duration of us staying in business. That was great.
That's what kept it interesting because you had to figure everything out, from HR to technology to marketing, to client relations to a myriad of things, and we just loved it. It was good to do it together. We're very complementary in many ways.
Yeah.
I remember how we went to the first interpretation conferences. We provided services, securing interpreters for large events, and we'd fly to, say, Miami or Chicago or New York. That was so much fun, getting on the plane,
Checking into the hotel, getting the conference badge, all of that.
putting our business suits on. That was so much fun.
Because part of it is, hey, the growth of your business, the success of your business, and that's all part of it. That process of going to these cities and going to those events, in the back of your mind was going to help with the revenue and the growth and the vision and what you guys are trying to put together.
Right. And the biggest thing we learned, for the growth of the company, it's Ina's favorite thing, is to start a sales team. Nobody told us for a long time, and finally somebody did.
Yeah, it clicked. We waited 10 years and grew the company very organically at a slow pace, profitable in every year, but we only kicked in with the sales force in 2005, which was 10 years after we started the company. And that's when sales really took off.
Right. Isn't that interesting? But hey, people give you props for having a profitable company the first 10 years. Most businesses struggle and they're in the red for.
We didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
We didn't think that
we
we
didn't
could
have
raise
the
any
money.
money.
Well, that leads to my next question. How did you guys fund it? You only had $5 open your bank account. How did you guys fund the organization to grow it? Or was it you picked up contracts and?
Yeah, because of the nature of the business, it's a service business, and 30, 60-day payment terms kind of are standard. And so what we did, we were providing services, and once we were getting paid, we would pay translators or whoever we were using for different jobs. So it was self-funded the whole way. We never needed the money, so we always kind of stayed in the healthy margin business model, never wanted to do too much for too little. So always we're looking for clients that are willing to pay premium for high quality. And so that was the business model.
In a nutshell, the old-fashioned way. We never spent more than we had and still had something left at the end for profit.
We need to teach that lesson to the U.S. government.
And we had to survive on
And you got,
Exactly.
and in Orange County, of all
Yes.
places. So was there a moment in building the business where you thought you weren't going to make it?
There's one story. We had a large contract in the early years with IBM. At the time, it was worth more than any other job than we had. And they wanted us to build a service that we were not providing called legal review. And we made sure that that was not part of our contract with the company. So when we delivered the services and they insisted on having legal review done, we refused to do that, and they threatened not to get us paid. That's when we had to get a legal counsel involved, and we knew that we were at the time. Yes, we had we knew that we owed a lot of money to the translators, and we needed to pay them for the job that was done. But after some legal going back and forth, we got paid, and we made sure that never happened again.
That could have been a killing blow, but it wasn't at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, you worked your way through that. So what did it take to drive the business to over $20 million in annual revenue?
We found a niche. We found a niche in the pharmaceutical and medical device space that opened up in the early 2000s, and we decided to stay in that area because it was highly technical service that we had to provide. The clients were willing to pay premium dollar for the services because the job had to be done right. It's a very litigious and regulatory-driven industry. And we grew and became one of the companies well known in that area that eventually led to the sale of JLS to a competitor that didn't have that particular expertise.
Yeah, and this is one of the big business lessons that everybody goes through, I believe, that specialization and narrow focus often helps differentiate the business and also become an expert in that particular area, and that which drives premium clients and premium prices and so forth. Life sciences for us became a total focus, and it was somewhat risk-taking and scary to say, okay, we're not going to be doing financial translations anymore. We're not going to be focusing on legal. We're just going to be doing life sciences, because changes in the industry might drive some clients away, and then you would be left with limited expertise. But it worked for us because for the last 10 years, that's all we did, and we focused even in a more narrow field in life sciences industry, which is support of global clinical trials for new drugs.
Sure.
And so that was a differentiating factor, and we developed very deep expertise in that. And we've had the world's largest companies come to us for those type of translations, although we were a small, relatively small translation agency.
Was it hard to contemplate selling the company because you grew it? It's your baby. You went through the growing or the birthing pains, the growth stages of the company. What was it that motivated you to ultimately sell?
Well, we had been in the industry for, at that point, over 22 years. So we really felt that we grew that baby. We put it through all sorts of education, college, and it was time to let it fly.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
Yeah, and also at the time in my personal life, I was contemplating eventually moving to a different state, to Boulder, Colorado, where my husband is from. I had met him 5.5 years ago. And that was the two pieces of motivation for me.
Yeah, and also we've given it all of our talents and effort and passion for so many years. We felt like we are ready for the next chapter, so to speak. And it was getting increasingly complex as well. We had international offices in 8 countries. It was, for me, it was stressful as well. So I was kind of ready to switch gears a little bit and do something. Always like doing creative things. So I wanted to do that more and to have time and to have headspace for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I've been involved in 6 startups with medical devices, and it takes tremendous energy and passion, and you get to an inflection point. When you go from 0 to 30 million in revenue, you need to raise a lot more money just to go from 30 to 50 million in revenue. And the energy and resources to make it more global is not immaterial or insignificant. So I get really what you're saying, but I think
it's a different beast at every stage of the company, right? 0 to 10 is
totally
one type of company. 10 to 20 is a different.
You have to relearn, and we never really took in any major outside talent on the founder level or C-suite level. So we've done all the learning ourselves, and it's a lot of learning. So we thought we were good. We were good to
graduate the baby.
Yeah, no, that's great. So now it's a PhD, maybe a double PhD.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're into some philanthropic work. Talk to us about what your next passion, your current passion is in that regard.
We've chosen 2 different organizations. For me, it's the Autism Community in Action. The acronym of it is TACA. It's an Orange County-based organization led by Lisa Ackerman, who had happened to be my neighbor in Newport Beach for many years. And she's helping through her organization on a very significant level to families living with autism across the United States and now the world. And I thought that that would be a great use of my time to help Lisa. I'm now a board member of TACA, participate in the annual event that they have every October in Orange County, which raises over $500,000 every single year, and that's a great use of my time.
Fantastic! Wow.
Yeah, and I got involved with another local charity called Human Options, and they've been around for 38 years. It's a very well-established charitable foundation that helps women and children who were victims of domestic violence, both to rebuild their lives and to shelter them at the beginning, and then to provide legal support and job searches and a lot of different services that are available for those families that are in need. And so I'm also on the board of directors, and this is my first year. And also after we sold the company, we funded a private operating foundation called Plan A Foundation. And Ina and I are both founders, and we focus on helping young female entrepreneurs who are usually or mostly focusing on the first or second generation immigrants who come here, kind of similar to us. And they're trying to start their businesses or they're launching their careers and they lack resources of some kind. And we start with mentoring and business coaching. And then we do, if needed, we fund their certifications or tuition, or there are different ways of, or connect them with our network of friends who can then provide the different advice in different areas to them. So we've helped maybe about 15 different ladies so far. And it's very rewarding because, it's a shortcut. If somebody gets, say, a set of business coaching sessions that they would never have done themselves at 25, it saves you probably 5-10 years of meandering and trying to figure out. And so that's what we lacked. And we always thought, gosh, if anybody sat down with us at 25 and said, no, don't go through Chamber of Commerce, just put an ad in the paper or something like that, it would have saved us a lot of.
So you provide a roadmap, a recipe for success, sort of truncate
just
the process.
guidelines, but for us it was, and that's why the focus on immigrants, because if you are from a different country, you are entering a totally different ball game, right? The rules are different, the engagements are different. We were kind of, totally in unknown territory, so we had to learn everything. And so if somebody local would have saved us some time, that would have helped,
And also, the last few years of running JLS, the most rewarding part of our job was to grow people from within. Olga mentioned that we never really took outside talent for the key positions in the company. We chose to really grow them from within and have several incredible success stories of young people coming to work for us and going from the receptionist position all the way to the director of global operations or head of HR.
What a great story.
And those people we still are in contact with and stay in touch with and watch their careers grow and blossom. Wonderful. So this was just an extension of what we did in the company.
Wow, that's awesome. Awesome. What advice could you give to aspiring entrepreneurs who are thinking about starting their own business? Would you tell them to do it again?
Start young. When you have nothing to lose.
Start now.
Start now. Yeah, start young.
Is it ever too old or too late to start, or is it really it's a young man's game or young woman's game?
It's not a young man's game. Just it's easier to do that if there's an option to do that. It's easier to do that, and the advice is always to do it when there's really not much to lose. Like in our case, we were in our early 20s. We hadn't experienced yet the burdens or the responsibilities of being an adult, having families, children, and doing that at that age was definitely beneficial to us.
Yeah, and to remember that everything excellent takes time, and to build your company, to build your career, you have to continuously learn and improve, and every day you have to do something better than you've done before, and that will differentiate you from everybody else, because if you are the best you can be and yet you're thriving to be even better, that will achieve results at the end.
Yeah.
And also surround yourself with people who have a lot more experience than you from the start. For us at the beginning, it was just the two of us, and we were the bouncing board for whatever advice was needed, and a few people around us. But later in the history of the company, we reached out to other networks and derived great benefits for what we did. So always do that at the beginning.
That is a critical piece of advice. I know in starting my company, it's like there's things I just don't know. And I'm very
and
okay
you don't
with
know
that
you don't know,
and
right?
I don't know that I don't know, and you just find really smart people and you just put the spotlight on them and let them shine and let them do their thing, and it's amazing what comes of that process. And I think sometimes ego can get in the way of better judgment and progress. Mm-hmm. And that's really sage advice. It's really important to find the right team, the right people, and to make sure you get the right chemistry on the team. That's not, you have a certain culture you've established, a certain way of thinking, doing business. You got to make sure even with the experience, there's some alignment regarding that, because otherwise you can have people come in that could be disruptors with a lot of experience, and
Absolutely.
that's not always helpful.
Yes. and also curiosity. I think both of us would say that we're lifelong learners. We read a lot. We constantly look for information from all different sources, and we've been like that our entire life. So curiosity is key.
That's awesome.
Definitely.
Staying open-minded and flexible and agile, and have staying power and discipline. There is no substitute for discipline and perseverance. You know, the 10 more minutes rule, where Ina and I would be doing something that we both were frustrated with or difficult, and we wanted to quit, but we always remembered that if let's do 10 more minutes, and 10 more minutes gets you to somewhere where most people don't go.
Right.
It just pushes the envelope, and at the end of the day, we went very far with that kind of perseverance and discipline.
That's great. It reminds me of the Navy SEALs. They kind of have a similar model where they push you to the breaking point, and what they're trying to see is sift the wheat from the chaff. Who's going to stick around when it's the worst? When it's so uncertain, when it's the worst of uncertainty. And it's the same thing. You just keep going. You don't quit. You just keep pushing.
You
Cultivate
can
that.
find a lot more resources than you thought you had.
Right.
We have a lot more available within us than what we often push ourselves to.
It's like professional athletes when they run, and they run to the point where the pain is so hard. They say the first wave of pain, it's not even pain. It's just your mind telling you that it's tired.
Right.
So you push through that, and then you come to the next level of pain. It's also there, but you can push through that as well. And so a lot of people stop in front of the first pain barrier because it's all of a sudden uncomfortable. But if you push through, then you'll discover much more is on the other side.
For us, it wasn't as painful as you're describing, but still,
Yeah.
staying power is important.
Absolutely. So switching gears, who's that person that's had the most influence in your lives?
For me, I think several people at different phases in life. When I was 11 or 12, I absolutely idolized my mother. And she was one of those people where I thought she was the most beautiful, the most talented. People were gravitating toward her. She was a math teacher and a gifted one. So children of all ages adored her. And I remember being 12 years old, writing her a birthday card. She was 36 at the time, much younger than I am at this point. And I just thought of listing all of her qualities, and I ran out of the card. So that was my mom. I was absolutely in love with her. And she was very much like many women in the Soviet Union, though, because all of the kids that I knew, they had two working parents. So women and men worked. So I think that in a sense, she was my greatest role model at the time, that I could do everything. She could certainly do everything. She could work. She could stand in lines for food. She could cook. She could clean, everything. So she was my role model. Later in life, when we started the company, I learned a lot from Olga. It was definitely something that I learned a lot. I learned that to get out of people their best self and their best effort, you don't necessarily have to be incredibly tough and demanding. You have to have the expectations, but you can ask in such a way, in the diplomatic way that Olga really has about her, that it taught my approach to people, and I think it served me well. And in the last 5 years after I met my husband, which caused my move to Boulder, to Colorado, I think that he is the greatest influence on my life, because I can measure my life in pure units of joy. And
Oh,
it's
that's
been
wonderful.
joyful every day. Yeah.
What a great story. Wow.
Yeah, and in my case, my grandmother, her name was also Olga. She taught me a lot of things. She taught me the diplomacy that Ina is talking about, by the way. She was a very diplomatic, very thoughtful, very considerate person. And people a lot of times underappreciate the power of, and not so much diplomacy, but this kind of attitude where you, as you say, get best results without a hard pushing energy. It's more of like a request or, it worked very well with me. And then she also taught me a lot of different things, such as, how to cook, how to sew, how to make clothes, how to knit. And as one of my side hobbies now, I started a little clothing brand, because I know I've learned all these skills from her when I was a young girl. And of course, Ina was also my co-mentor. We mentored each other because we didn't have other mentors, and we have been best friends for 26
Who's
years.
Started counting,
Yeah.
counting, yes.
and I'm very proud to be a godmother of her kids. And our lives are extremely intertwined, and we came out of the business better friends than we went into it, which is very unusual.
Which is saying something. Yeah, usually it doesn't work that way always.
Yes.
Always, yeah. Very cool, very cool. If you can go back in time and give yourself advice, what would it be?
I wouldn't go back. And I wouldn't give advice because I don't know what I was at that time. I think we changed so much, right? From the point when I left Russia at 21, and then I was in Europe for a few years. All of these stages in life are kind of a different identity almost. So I think I went through all the learning lessons that needed to be learned to arrive where you are. If you look backwards, you can kind of see the trajectory. But I think the lessons would be incredible power of family and friendships, incredible power of discipline and perseverance, and balance in life. Have balance, because we've never sacrificed balance. Thank goodness, we've never worked 14-hour days. We were lucky that way. We worked hard, but more smarter than harder. Yeah. Yes. And so if you have that kind of attitude from the beginning, you can set yourself up to be successful even with that instead of.
So you came up with a few things that you could have said to your
I could have
younger
said
self.
yes.
Yeah.
Would I have listened? I don't know.
Yeah. No, and for me, I think the one thing that comes to mind is not take everything too seriously. Because again, I think it's part of our upbringing. Everything just was serious. There is no translation for the word fun in Russian.
Really?
There is no such concept that can be said in one succinct word. So, just having more fun, being more lighthearted, and not taking life seriously as we grew up to take. Yeah.
Now when you're retired.
Exactly.
Right.
No, it's true, but still, I think lightheartedness is a state of mind for me that I'm thriving towards.
Well, lightheartedness may be the answer to longevity at some level, right? If everybody's heavy-hearted, it affects you physiologically. Yeah,
That's right.
It's great advice.
That's right.
Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to share with the audience?
I think what we always go back to, and why our partnership has always been great, is what a friend of ours expressed once. He said that at any given point in your business career, in your business life with Olga, the friendship was always more important to you than the business itself, the success of the business. And that's why in over 22 years of running the company together, we never had a fight, which is pretty unusual. And also another piece of advice is that the person who has the strongest opinion about a topic or business issue at hand, in our case, we always let that person win. And not having huge egos involved in running the company, that really helps, because over time, that really evens itself out. Because sometimes Olga would have a stronger opinion about a topic. We'd have a discussion about that. I would present my opinion and she would present hers. But at the end of the day, it was about who has the strongest passion about a topic. That person won. That was our goal.
Yeah, that was a good conflict resolution methodology, because a lot of partnerships run into problems because they can't agree on something.
Right.
And they are not willing to compromise or to let the other person have their way. But we figured out this dynamic that worked in the most of frustrating and stressful circumstances, where if she would be passionate about it more than I was about a certain thing, I would let her win, and vice versa. And also, I came up with this phrase, learn, earn, and return, as being like the three main portions of your life. We've spent until 25 or so going through schooling and learning, and then you have a 25, 30-year business career where you're trying to earn things, and then returning part of it comes hopefully to everybody at some point, where they can give back and help others and help facilitate their journey. And so
we're at that point in our life.
I really like that. Learn, earn, return. You can write a book on that.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a good catchy title,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Learn, earn, return.
Exactly.
That's good. We should trademark that.
You can have it, by the way. No, you
thank
can't.
No,
Just kidding. Well, Olga and Ina, thanks for coming on the show. Fascinating journey. Thanks for sharing with the audience. It's certainly inspirational to me, and I just admire your dedication, your discipline, your focus to get to this point, because I know in my career, it's not easy when you're doing a startup or you build a business on your own. It's very, very challenging. So congratulations on your success, and always the best in the future as you work on the philanthropy portion of it.
Thank you,
so
Ben.
much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Thanks. That's it from Beyond. You can connect with me on YouTube at Beyond Ben Bobo, on our website, beyondbenbobo.com. And until next time, remember, becoming is better than being.